how many of these little notepads do you have lying around in your office or even in your stationery cupboard? Post-it notes, an invention from 1974 that revolutionized office work. Inventors Spencer Silver and Art Fry didn't invent these as productivity tools. No, they were invented as essentially bookmarks and also ways of keeping groups of paper together. And they were brilliant, and weirdly, post-it notes came about because of an accident, or sorry, not an accident, but a failure to create glue. But when put together with paper, they became reusable, and which is the reason why today these things are still around. It's incredible how they have endured for so long. And today, whenever I visit our local Daiso store, which is kind of a Japanese discount store, the stationery floor, and yes, they usually have a stationery store, is full of middle and high school kids buying packets and packets of these little things. So they're still incredibly successful, still amazingly sought after, and still used today. Now, in the productivity world, we started sticking these to our monitors, and we would stick one, and then we would stick two, and then we would stick three, and it just became a long line of post-it notes with little reminders on there. Now, in theory, the psychology behind this actually works. You see, the psychology is around the idea that what you see, you remember. This is why if you need to remember something really important the next day when you go to the office or when you go out, you would normally leave the bag or whatever it is next to your front door. So you have to step over it before you can actually leave your house. That way, you're not going to forget it. It's what you see is what you remember. And it does work. It's an incredibly powerful psychological trick. Unfortunately, the problem was that we started writing way too many of these notes and stuck them all over our desk. And now, instead of becoming a center of attention and focus, it just became environmental noise. More and more yellow, pink, green post-it notes all over the place. Now, once you have too many, the whole system falls apart because you no longer look at it. Your brain just becomes numb to the sheer volume of post-it notes stuck around. So they kind of lost favor in the productivity world. And in many ways, and I remember this from reading the Getting Things Done book, they became a kind of joke in the productivity world. And yet, the psychology didn't change. What changed was our human behavior, our natural human behavior. Wow, sticking a single post-it note on our monitor keeps me focused on what's really important today. Let me add more and more and more and more. And now the power of that single post-it note, the single post-it note, suddenly disappears. What you're doing is you're diluting your attention. And as soon as you dilute your attention, now you get that problem of paradox of choice. You also start to go numb to the sheer volume on the front of the screen. And then the digital world happened. And clearly, we learnt nothing from what we learnt about the problems with post-it notes, because what we started doing was loading up our digital to-do list with more and more and more stuff. Now it's no longer a place of focus, it's just a place of overwhelm, which is one of the reasons why there are two things that you can do that harnesses the power of the post-it note and yet avoids that trap of us adding more and more and more and more. Because as soon as you start adding more and more and more and more, that's when it just becomes environmental noise and you stop paying attention. So if you want to feel less stressed, less overwhelmed, it's time to go back to the basic principles of what we learned with our humble post-it notes. A single post-it note, perhaps two post-it notes stuck on your table or on your monitor, that works. It works remarkably well because Those are the only two things that you really need to put your attention on today. Now, sure, there is a ton of other stuff that we have to do. We have emails to respond to. We have meetings to go to. We have documents to read and review and so on and so forth. And that's just normal part of everyday work. Now, that's where the digital task manager can be really helpful. However, what I've done is I've often told people, and still tell people today, that one of the most powerful things you can do is to write down the 2 or, if you must, 3 most important things that need to be done today. The 2 or 3 things that you must not forget to do. Everything else can be just pushed off to some other time. But the important thing is the 2 or 3 things that absolutely must be done today. You can use your post-it notes. You can stick them down on your desk in front of your monitor, or perhaps on a notebook. Or you could just use something a little more mobile. Now, before we go any further, if you would like to learn a simple, easy to use productivity and time management system, then I strongly recommend that you take my free COD course. COD stands for Collect, Organise and Do, and all the principles that you're learning in this video this week are taught in the free COD course. I'll put the details in the show notes. It'll take you 45 minutes, but I tell you what, it will revolutionize how you manage your work. Now, one of the ways to overcome this is you can use something like a Pullein A7 flip notebook. Now, I've mentioned this many times before. All you need to do is you write the date at the top and then your 2 or 3 things down there. So as you can see here, you can't read it, but I've got 2 things here plus today's date, and I can just cross them off. Really powerful because it's small enough to not take up a lot of space on your desk. You can just dump it in front of your laptop or your screen, and off you go. That keeps you focused on the 2 or 3 things that are most important today. Now, if you prefer a little luxury, a little bit more luxury, you can go for these leather-bound Me Plus notebooks, which work in exactly the same way. Beautiful, well-made leather case, and then you've got these rings, and you can just, again, write down the 2 or 3 things that you must do. This can open flat on your table, and there you go. You've got your focus for the day. It takes probably less than a minute to write down the 2 or 3 things that are most important to you. Now, I've done a review on the Me Plus Mini Reporter, which I'll link to below. But the purpose of this is really to get away from that overwhelm, and that is basically on you. It's not on the tools that you use. You're the one who's writing these lists. You're the one who's collecting all this stuff. Now, the more stuff you collect, the more you have to process, which requires more time. It's fine if that's what you have to do. But there are some other little things that you can do that will really help you to get focused on what matters today. The first one is to do a daily planning session. Now, a daily planning session is not particularly difficult. It's just 3 things. The first thing you do is you look at your calendar. You need to know how much time is going to be spent in meetings or appointments or wherever you cannot work. You need to know what your commitments are for today. The second is to curate your to-do list. Get it down to a realistic level so that you know that whatever you're looking at, based on how many appointments you have for the day, is realistic and can be done. And the third thing is to prioritize that list, to pull out your 2 or 3 things that must be done today and write them down in a little notebook, or use a post-it note and stick the 3 things on your screen. And do not finish your work until those 2 or 3 things have been done. The second tip I can give you is just categorize your work. As I mentioned a moment ago, email and messages, for example, are not tasks. It's just a part of what you need to do. If you're using email or using Slack or Teams or whatever, they have inboxes. You don't need to transfer everything over to a task manager as well. You're just duplicating yourself. And most emails and messages can be responded to within that day. Now, okay, there are some caveats there. If an email or a message requires you to do an hour or 2's worth of work, then of course you will probably create a task from that. But the task is not the email. The task is the work that you have to do before you can respond to the email. So usually I would do is, thank you very much for that email. I'll get onto it and get it back to you as soon as I can. And then I create a task and that's it. The person knows that I'm onto it, I've acknowledged it, and now I can get on and do the work. Now the advantage of that, if you say as soon as I can, if it's genuinely urgent, they will come back to you and give you a deadline. If it's not, you'll just get a reply saying thank you, and that's it. You know now you're in control of the time. But these little things are going back to the essence of why the Post-it note was so successful initially. It's because we curated it, we limited and we gave ourselves constraints as to what we would put on the Post-it notes. Now, as soon as we let go of those constraints and started adding more and more and more and more, it just became environmental noise. This is one of the reasons why digital task managers often don't work. It's not because there's a problem with the tool itself, there's a problem with us. It's because we just add way too much, instead of getting it really primed and focused on what really matters. Emails you're going to do anyway. Little tasks, admin tasks, you're probably going to get on and do in between sessions of work. If you need a reminder of those, by all means, just throw them on a list somewhere. But what matters is what you need to get focused on. The things that you have identified are really important today. And that's what I say, the humble Post-it note was incredibly powerful for that. As I say, it was just our human nature destroyed it, and then we turned it into a joke, which I've never really understood, because I see the power of the Post-it note and I still use them from time to time, not every day, but if I need to say do something at a specific time, because I'm slightly ADHD, I can actually quite easily forget. So I will stick a Post-it note on my laptop screen, not the monitor at the bottom, but the screen, so that I cannot miss it. I keep looking at it. 4 p.m, take Louis to his haircut appointment or something. But I will know then that I will not forget, because it's always in my sight and it's always on my mind. That's the power of the Post-it note. But as soon as you add more and more, you just dilute it. It's the same what we do with our digital to-do list. It's what we're often doing with any written to-do list. We just add way too much, instead of deciding what can I realistically do today, and that's the list that you focus on, making sure you highlight the most important things. Now, if you want to learn a little bit more about why pen and paper is today's quiet luxury, then this video up here is definitely the one to watch next.